What's happening, HC Nation? Zach Edwards here with another episode of the Adventure Box podcast. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most epic battles ever fought in ancient Rome. This is the Punic Wars. There's 3 of them. We're going to go through each of them and the relationship of the first to the third and why they're so significant. Actually, first to the second and second to the third. But why it's so significant in family relationships. Okay, so first off, this is all brought to you by Historical Conquest, which is a really fun game where you're actually able to play with history, but without having to know anything about history in order to play. Have you ever played the game of Risk? This is Risk in card form. Instead of playing with the nameless, faceless little figures, you're playing with cards of actual people from history. You can actually read their history, and the abilities are based off of that history for the gameplay. So every card's unique, and every game is different because it's a card. So cards, it's the luck of the draw is what they call it. And you pull 5 cards off the top, they're going to be different than the last time you played and the time before that you played. And as you go, it'd take you like 1,000,000 times to be able to play the same game twice. And then it all depends on your choices if you're going to use those certain tactics. So I love card games for that reason. They're never the same twice. Okay, here we go. Punic Wars. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a time that's very, very important when it comes to Roman history. It's basically where they get dominance over the whole entire, Mediterranean. Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into this, into one of the most defining moments for Rome. Now, there's 2 things today instead of 3. I usually have 3, but 2 things we're going to be covering. First, the Punic Wars. 3 brutal conflicts between Rome and Carthage that changed the Mediterranean forever. That is what's so significant about it. Okay, so the second thing is the lasting impact of the Roman expansion. This is interesting, because of the Punic Wars, that's what spurred Romans to expand. Before that, they weren't expanding that fast, but because of Carthage, they did. Now, let me show you a picture of Carthage. I'm going to come back to this picture. Okay, so you had Carthage. Carthage is a city-state down here. It's an area, but they started to expand. Again, Rome is over here. They were worrying about their own battles and such. They weren't worrying about the Carthaginians. And they came up to New Carthage. Now, when you start up a new location, this is actually around where the Greek colonies were. When you start up this new location, you're going to start wanting to expand a little bit more. So, Carthage decided that they wanted to expand. They wanted to move on the next big bully. Take down the bullies. Nobody wants to mess with you. So, you come to school and you see 2 big bullies there. Now, you could take out the smaller bully, or you could take out the bigger bully. This is what I'm not saying you should ever do this, but this is the mindset that Rome had, or that Carthage had. So instead of taking out a smaller bully, such as down below, who is down there? Who is down east of Carthage? That would be Egypt. They could have taken them over. But no, they wanted Sicily. They wanted this area. So during the first Punic Wars, they moved out to Sicily and took Sicily. Rome was also starting to establish this area, and so they came down to Syracuse. Now, the first Punic War began in 264 BC, when Rome, still a land based in power, found itself in a dispute with those in Carthage. Now, Carthage, again, became a very powerful trading empire in North Africa. So, of course, other trading groups, you're going to hear about them, whether it's from your own people who might have traveled into the area, or other traders that come in and tell you. So because of this, Carthage actually controlled parts of Sicily, the island right here. They had one of the most powerful naval fleets at the time. Again, Greece, gone. People of the sea, still around, but not as powerful. Carthage had a great naval empire, naval force in the western side of the Mediterranean. The sea people were more in the eastern side near Greece. So Rome had no navy at the time. They had to build one up from scratch and develop the Carvus, which is a boarding bridge that basically turned sea battles into land type battles. You know what that was? Okay, so think of it, your two ships come together. They might have a plank that goes down. What happens when the sea tosses them away? That plank goes away. It basically falls to the ground. Romans knew this. So they took the idea of the ships from Greece and from Carthage and copied them. Then, because they weren't best at sea battle, they were best at land battle, they made these specific plates. They were planks. They're just like a walking the plank. But it fell down onto the other ship. And when it fell down, it had daggers in it. And those heavy pieces of metal would go straight through the floor of the ship, and it would become one ship. Two ships colliding together with those planks, the corvus, it all of a sudden became one big ship, which turned it from a sea battle into a land-style battle. The results, after 23 years of war, Rome won and took over Sicily. They took over this land. Now, that did not make those in Carthage happy. It was its first overseas province was Sicily. Now, they did not come down to Carthage. They didn't want anything to do with Carthage. They wanted Sicily. It was close, and it was very fertile, which means more agriculture, more trade. Rome was now on the imperial path. They were moving towards taking over a lot of land. So most of the battles happened in Sicily and in the sea around it, the Mediterranean around it. Let's talk about the second Punic Wars, sorry. The second Punic War was where we introduce these guys, the elephants. That's right. So the first Punic War was long, 23 years. The second was legendary. This is the one that people talk about all the time. Its central figure was Hannibal Barca. Now, his father was actually in the first Punic War, and he lost it. So his father, going back to Carthage in shame, took Hannibal Barca is the right pronunciation, to an altar and made him vow an oath of hatred and revenge towards Rome. Father, not very good fatherly figure, pushed him to basically do this. So, in about 218 BC, Hannibal launched an audacious plan, a sporadic, mind-blowing. There you go. There's a good way of putting it. Okay, he led an army, including war elephants, from Spain. Gotta bring this back up. From Spain, right here, New Carthage, all the way through the Alps, which are up here, and into Italy. Yeah, that's a lot. Especially think about the elephants climbing the mountains. Yeah, those elephants were really put to work. So they crossed over the Alps and came down into Italy. They wanted to surprise them, and boy, they did. They definitely did. Let's show you the Second Punic Wars. So starting from Carthage, he moved up, moved up, and moved up, until finally he was in Roman areas, and then attacked Arretium, and then came down to other cities around the eastern sea border, and then came back towards Rome and took over Rome, nearly. They sacked it. They did not keep it. Now, interesting enough, Rome, during one of its other battles, basically pushed out one of their leaders. You're going to read about this in the textbook. I'm not going to, there's too much information. Too many different things that we could talk about. But Rome had pushed out one of their greatest warriors and his army. And what did they do? Well, this person decided, I'm going to come back at this time. He might have heard of what was happening with the Punic Wars. And so he comes back and he says, Rome's taken over, and takes it back. So Hannibal, let's go through some of his victories. Okay, he won at Trebia, which I don't see it on here. Trebia. Yeah, I don't see it on here. Trebia. It was one of the most substantial. Then Lake Trasimene. I don't have that either. Wow, I'm really missing a lot of these places. And most famously, Canaan. Not on here as well. Boy, that's embarrassing. But that was by 216 BC. Now, the Battle of Canaan. Hannibal faced a much larger Roman force because he was in the mix now. He was in Rome. He used double envelopment. Double envelopment. He surrounded and destroyed the Roman army. So the Battle of Canaan, his tactic was to go around the army, to encircle it, and attack from all sides. Okay, now, estimates, we're not quite sure exactly how many died, that 50,000 Romans died in that one campaign in 216 BC. But Hannibal lacked one big thing. He forgot one huge thing. This is what the Romans had learned while taking over some of the city-states in the Italian Peninsula. Reinforcements! You rock with your whole army into Rome, and you go through this great battle, the Battle of Cana, and you don't have reinforcements, yeah, you're going to be in trouble. He never captured Rome itself, though. That's right, that's what it was. He never captured Rome. He got to it, never captured Rome. Rome, led by Fabius Maximus, and later by Scorpio Africanus, rebounded. Basically took it back. Now, in 202 BC, at the Battle of Zama, Scorpio defeated Hannibal in northern Africa. Now, why is this significant? So this is up here, in this area. So Zama, right there. What's so significant is Scorpio had something else in mind. Okay, we've got Hannibal up here in Italy. Who's protecting his land? And that's when Scorpio Africanus came down, this is him, came down and attacked. And the biggest battle was the Battle of Zama, and took over Carthage. This is also when, wait a second, who figured that out? Oh yeah, Hannibal realized, oh, I don't have anyone over there. I took my whole army. Who's protecting my homeland? And so, all of a sudden, Carthage, the army, made ships and came from the boot back to fight and lost. So Rome took over. Carthage surrendered. Rome became the dominant power in Western Mediterranean Sea. But what about the Third Punic Wars? Why was there a Third Punic War? Carthage was taken over. Usually when a city-state is taken over, you have the Romans who say, well, you can plead loyalty to us, and then you don't have to worry about it. Well, the weakened, Carthage recovered economically. This made some Romans nervous, such as Cato the Elder, who famously ended every speech with Carthaga delenda este, which means Carthage must be destroyed. So by ending it there, he created a large stirring in Rome. Now remember, the war ended around 202 BC. This is about a little bit over 50 years later. In 149 BC, Roman legions besieged Carthage. Now, there's actually something else that I just learned recently. What actually happened, one of the big things that happened, is because the Carthaginians basically said, we will not fight any Romans, we will not fight anyone at all. We are giving our allegiance to Rome. We will not fight at all. We will stay where we are, happy and loyal. But the Romans didn't like that. People in Rome didn't like that, including Cato. So he actually sent over warships to attack the Carthaginian ships. And this is what actually got it started. The Carthaginians would fight back. Well, they weren't allowed to fight back. And that's why in 149 BC, the Roman legions came back into Carthage. And after 3 years, they broke, basically utterly destroyed the city in 146, 3 years later. So BC, 146 BC, Carthage was gone. Its land became Roman Africa. Carthage was no more. Ever again. So Rome now controlled Italy. It controlled Spain. It controlled Greece, because it went over to Greece. We will talk about that in a little bit. And North Africa. And the islands across the sea. So basically everything in the Western Mediterranean was now Rome's. So it became the Mediterranean superpower. Now, segment number 2. I told you we were going to talk about the expansion of the Romans. So, the return from war. Who are the winners and the losers? Okay, so the Roman soldiers returned home after years of war, after years of giving up everything. They wanted to start families. They were landowners. They wanted to harvest their grain. They wanted to do things with their land. Yeah, most of them didn't farm it. Most of them leased it out. Sorry. They didn't all return to wealth and glory. Many small farmers had lost their land by this time while they were away fighting. That's right. Others had taken control of their land. The larger, wealthier landowners took them over. They were sold by the wealthier landowners. Others moved to the cities. Well, I say a lot of those moved to the cities as well. And most of them moved to Rome. They were hoping for work and also public grain. That's right. Because in Rome, you could get grain. They gave it out. Why? Because they took everything else from you. The Roman powerhouse, the government, and those wealthy people that were attached to them took over all of Rome, while the soldiers who were serving them were being killed. So at the same time, rich generals and senators grew even richer, bringing back slaves from Carthage and from other areas that they were fighting, and the other conquered areas. They looted the lands. They stole additional lands. This began the rise of economic inequality in Rome. We'll go more into that later on, because there's 2 brothers I want to tell you about. These 2 brothers are pivotal at this time, but we're not going to talk about them right now. One major thing, one last major change, we'll say, was created. It was the creation of latifundia. Latifundia, huge estates owned by the elite and worked by slaves. These estates produced grain, wine, and olive oil on a massive scale. And yes, they did give some to the Romans to give out to the poor and those that the lands were taken away from. Even the soldiers who their land was taken away from. Their land was producing the crops that they were getting for free by the honorable government, by them. Slaves from Carthage and Greece and other places began to flood into Italy. There were no jobs. Slave labor replaced free labor. Slave labor, well, I should say free labor replaced paid labor. Slave labor replaced free labor, putting further pressure on the poor Romans. The economy shifted from small family farms to agribusiness. And profits began going to basically a few people. So Rome had conquered the Mediterranean, but by doing so, it created this huge crack in society, in its foundation. Who was Rome? Rome was the people. The people were Rome. And yet, nope, nope. The Romans, the elite, believed that the elite were Rome, and that the poor and everyone else was not. With wealth had began to basically corrupt. It didn't really before that. Ambitious politicians began using bribery and violence to win office. Oh, we're going to get into some of the Caesars who end up like stabbing, or sorry, not the Caesars, the senators who basically end up stabbing, assassinating multiple consuls. The executive branch when it comes to Roman leadership. The Senate became increasingly dominated by the wealthy elite. Not just those that came back with glory, but now wealthy elite. And everyone else was pushed out, even though you're not supposed to be able to remove a senator until they die. Well, if they all start dying, Roman wealthy elites start taking over. The urban poor grew restless. What happens every time that take the last 4 years? You had very wealthy tech giants all becoming very wealthy. You had nonprofits, NGOs, non-government organizations getting money hand over fist from the U.S. government. You had all this different corruption that was happening in our government. And what happened? Well, the next election came because of inflation, because the poor were just getting poorer, because the wealthy, and I'm not saying all wealthy were corrupt, but a lot of the wealthy were becoming more corrupt. Take Nancy Pelosi for one instance. I mean, she's a senator. Oh, sorry, she's a congresswoman. Got it wrong twice. Third time's a charm. Okay. She's one of the biggest corrupt ones out there. She makes so much money off of inside trading, and everyone knows it. But no one ever does anything about it. And so many people do. They had so many bills in the last 8 years that would level the playing field with trade, with buying on the stock market, and they've never done anything about it because who's in charge? The people making the rules. Okay. So what happened last year? The power went back to the Republicans. It went back to Trump because those that were in the lower class believed that Trump was going to make it better for them. And as of right now, he's starting to. Not for those that worked in the government. No, a lot of those got fired or got a severance package to leave. No, he really helped out those that were working class. And the working class know it, which is why they're giving him a little lenience when it comes to the trade. Or with oh, come on. It's on the tip of my tongue. Trade. Wow, how embarrassing. Tariffs. Thank you. Okay, the tariffs. So, if the tariffs work, he'll be praised for it. If they do not, he'll be demonized and kicked out. Not out of office, but his party will not come back into power if that doesn't work. Okay, now let's just talk about some of the new societal classes that basically emerged from this. You had remember it used to be the patricians, who as a soldier you could become a patrician by serving, and the plebs, the plebeians. Now new classes came out as the equites, or this is basically the business class. They became powerful through contracts and tax farming. Okay. Then you had the proletariat, the proletary or proletarians, or working poor, had little except their vote. As citizens, they could vote, and their loyalty could be purchased. Okay, so now you have the rich business elite, and you have the very, very poor, but they have a vote, so they can be bought by the powerful. So this set the stage for these figures that I was talking about, the Gracchi brothers, and Marius, and eventually, you've heard of him before, Julius Caesar. But we will get to that next week. Okay, one last thing I'm going to talk about is the global reach. Okay, by 146 BC, Rome had transformed from city-state into a vast empire. It controlled territories such as Spain and now Greece, and because of the Punic Wars, now North Africa and the Alps. So nearly almost everything around the Mediterranean, except for where Egypt was, Israel was. Just wait for it, that's coming. So let me ask a few questions. Basically, how they succeeded. How do you govern millions of people across continents, not just in one place? We talked about it with Persians. We talked about it with the Babylonians. We talked about it with the Egyptians. We talked about it with everyone that tries to create an empire. How do you do this? They all had different ways, and they all failed. How did the Romans do it? What happens when wealth is concentrated at the top? I just told you about it. I mean, what was happening just now, or last year, in the elections? They lost their power because all the wealth and all the power started going to the top. Yes, there were other wealthy, and I'm not demonizing the wealthy, because there are good wealthy people. A lot of them. A whole lot of them. But when the wealthy start mixing with government and start doing a partnership there, that's when there's a question. And yes, you might point to like Doge, who Elon Musk is going in and looking at all the different ways that we're wasting money in the government. Holy cow, at least someone's doing it. I mean, everyone keeps talking about it for generations. I mean generations, not just years. Generations, and no one does anything about it. Not since like Reagan and even Clinton. Those were like the last two that actually did something about the waste in government. So you know what? Hat tip to Elon Musk. If you don't like it, too bad. We need government reform. So what happens when the wealthy are concentrated at the top? Okay, Elon Musk is. It all depends on who's actually at the top. If the person at the top, the consul or the president, is trying to make actual change that will make effect for those that are based in the voting bloc, I hope so. I hope they're going to actually make meaningful changes we want, not meaningful changes that they want and not us. So this is the big discrepancy between the last 4 years and right now. Now again, Trump's doing a lot of things that's making a lot of people angry. We'll see if it works. I got a last one when it comes to Rome. What happened when free citizens lose their land, lose their work, lose their voices? Last 4 years! Those were the three questions I had. It's just like everything in the last 4 years. And even today, when there's wealthy that are working with Trump. Will that come back to bite him? We don't know yet. What are we? We're less than 3 months in. We're 2.5 months in to his presidency. It feels like a year, doesn't it? Everything he's done. Yeah, so we have some time in this. So these weren't just problems of the past, of those in the Persia and Babylon and Greece and Egypt. This is an ongoing concept when it comes to any ancient civilization that tries to take over. But these were the hidden costs of victory. You take over land, you let them go, they will build up again and they will fight you again. And they might win this time. This is why you ransack, destroy, and set up your own government. That's how they did it. I wouldn't do it. That's how they do it. You got Russia. Russia's coming into Ukraine, basically trying to do the same thing. And Europe and the United States have been fighting them for the last 3 years. It needs to stop, but it can't stop by Russia taking over. So, I hope the president can do something about it. Okay, so the Punic Wars basically gave Rome everything it wanted. It gave it land, dominance, wealth, and status. As an unchallenged power in the Mediterranean, nobody wanted to challenge Rome because they have been so powerful and were so successful. But Rome's military success came at a price. First off, you might not think it's a price, but the rise of slavery. What happens when there's a lot of slaves in place? They could take over. They could split the voters. All these different things. That's an issue. What about the latifundia economy? Basically erodes the middle class. Everyone becomes poor, or some become poor and some become rich. The majority become poor. Veterans lost their land. That's totally messed up. Seriously. They fought for you. They should be getting extra land for that. And getting rich for a minute. But they didn't. The city of Rome swelled with poor citizens. Not just poor citizens, enslaved citizens, or enslaved labor as well. The citizens moved there for jobs. They couldn't get jobs because there was slave labor. Last thing. This is all a recap of what we just talked about. The Romans' politics began to fracture, crack. Soon, it would break. I got a question for you. An engagement question. Please put it in the comments below. If you were a Roman citizen in 146 BC, would you have seen Rome's expansion as a success or the beginning of a decline? Wait a second. A decline? What? Rome decline? Stay tuned for next week. Stay tuned for Monday. That's right. We will be talking about this and some of the other things that they did after this point. So thanks so much for joining us, and can't wait to talk to you next time. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.